Well, hello and welcome to an exciting Variegated Monstera episode. My name is Sean and I'm a houseplant enthusiast from Jakarta, Indonesia. This is a long episode packed with information, so this is how it's gonna go down. First of all, I will explain why they are so popular and why we're seeing so many in the market today. Then, we tour over 30 types of Variegated Monsteras that exist. At the end of the episode, I will divulge the mysterious creator behind the Monstera Devil that has eluded even the most discerning collectors and sellers. I've included timestamps for your convenience, so feel free to skip forward to the parts that's most relevant to you. I know that most of you are here just to see the tour, so go for it. This episode is brought to you by Palm Street, a US-based plant live shopping app that is both interactive and fun. The sellers on this app come from different backgrounds, including home growers, plant shops, large nurseries, and even botanical gardens. A lot of the Monsteras in today's episode periodically make appearance in some of the live sales, so if you are a plant lover residing in the United States, give this app a go. By the way, if my line of sight seems a little off, that's because I'm experimenting with the teleprompter. I've actually written a really long essay that we're gonna kind of read from, but I'm gonna go as naturally as I can. We have just so much information to go through in this episode, and it's so dense that I don't want to miss out on any point. I'm also sometimes looking at my screen down below because I wanted to see the plant that I'm talking about. Without further ado, let's begin. The Variegated Monstera is arguably the most famous houseplant in the world. Even non-plant people know what they are and assign a certain level of status symbol for those who grow one. But even the non-variegated all-green Monsteras are beloved because number one, they exude timeless beauty and they look good as a styling piece. Number two, they can size up really well, they're instantly recognizable by most. And number four, it can take a wide variety of living conditions anywhere in the world. Number five, they're actually extremely easy to care for and they're relatively fast-growing. They're also extremely easy to propagate and they ship very well. Now, feel free to disagree, but I took the liberty of categorizing the Monsteras into three main types. Now, disclaimer, all of these Monsteras technically belong to one species, the Monstera Deliciosa, but each variegated Monsteras featured in today's episode can be traced back to either one of these three types. So I'm gonna get started. Number one, the Borsigiana. This is the most common type. Their maximum leaf size isn't really that big. It can maybe get like this size for the leaf. It's actually faster growing. It does have a more vining, climbing habit. It does stretch out more with longer internodes, which makes them less bushy, and you can probably stick a few of them in one pot. They're also very easy to propagate because they do have that longer internode, and they also have thinner leaves, which means that their variegated parts are prone to crisping up. Now, the most common variegated Monsteras are the Borsigianas. Next, we have the Deliciosa. Now, the Deliciosa has monster-sized leaves when they mature, and they can get as big as a mattress. And they do have ruffles in the back of the petiole to support larger leaves. And they do have more fenestrations because these holes and splits help them prevent tear from the wind and rain in nature. They do have thicker stems and much closer internodes, which also can support its own weight. Now, they're much slower growing and they have thicker leaves, which means the variegated leaves are less likely to crisp up. And the variegated versions of the Deliciosa are a little bit more rare and expensive. Finally, the third one is the Thai Constellation. And the Thai Constellation actually come from the Deliciosa, but they will result from a tissue culture experiments in Thailand in the early 1990s to 2000s. It does have a striking cream to white splashes on marbling on the green leaves, and it does look like the constellation of stars in the sky, which is why they're called the Thai Constellation. But the newer generations have more sectoral variegations and different shades of variegation. Some are more yellow, some are more white, and some are even tricolored. Now, the best of all, with the Thai constellations, the variegation is very stable, so you don't run into problems of reversion like the Deliciosa and the Borsigiana. Now, I must warn you that the Thai constellations hate water and they're very prone to root rot. Now, why are we seeing so many in the market today? Number one, Monsteras are highly popular, as we mentioned earlier, and they're propagated in large numbers. Now, during propagation, genetic copying can create errors, resulting in some aberrant forms now and then. And tissue culture is also responsible for a lot of these wonderful discoveries. Some unique forms are also still being discovered in the wild, and also chemical gamma ray mutations induced by humans can also cause mutations. Finally, selective breeding or cutting from determined growers are finding all these interesting traits and magnifying these traits and also multiplying them. Now, before we look at all the variegated Monsteras in this episode, I have a disclaimer. I'm not going to be able to cover everything in the market today. I might have missed out on a few, but I'm going to try to as best as I can to cover some of the most popular ones. Feel free to comment down below if you know there are any that I've missed out. I also apologize ahead of time if there are any errors in my reporting, and I welcome corrections and friendly discussions in the comment section down below. video. Without further ado, let's see some of these Monsteras alphabetically where possible. Alright, so the first plant is the elbow, and this is the most common variegated Monstera that we have. It is a Borsigiana, and it hovers at around $50 to $100 per leaf, and I incorrectly predicted that the price would come down a few years ago, and I was wrong. The price is actually quite stable, but these days most people who want one can probably afford one. The next plant is the Monstera aurea, or rather the yellow variegated. I have a feeling this is a Borsigiana, but I could be wrong. And this is actually an easy growing plant. It's a little bit easier than the white variegated. It grows a little bit faster. Keep in mind the new leaf come out completely green. You gotta give it some time, and it's gonna start putting out variegation as it matures. Sometimes if you look closely at the leaf though, you can see that it is slightly tricolored with a bit of white or yellow variegation on it. The next plant is the creme brulee. This is a Thai constellation variety, and it made rounds on the internet a long time ago. It does have like very beautiful splashy with a bit of sectorals. It's just a very high quality Thai constellation, and it does have that creamy finish. The next plant is the Monstera electrolyte. Now this is new to me. I've only seen it this year, so I don't know where it came from. But a lot of Thai growers seem to have these on sale, but they're still rather expensive. Keep in mind that the new leaf is beautiful green on green variegation, but as the time goes by, the variegation becomes a little bit lighter and it becomes this like almost yellow custardy, lemony type variegation. I quite like it. I like the gradual change in the variegation. And pictured here is a very handsome owner, Vietciosa, proudly showing a large specimen of this electrolyte. The next plant is the Monstera greenbone. It's come from the Deliciosa var Brazil, which means it's got that fishbone type shape on the leaves, a very dramatic fenestration, and it seems to be a green on green variegation with the lighter green dominating the plant. And here's a baby plant from Happy Plant Sock. This one here is the Monstera Green Snow. It's a Thai constellation. Now we're going to see a lot of Thai constellation, and honestly I will not be able to tell the difference between one from another. A lot of them look quite similar to me, but they seem to quite favor this almost like a creamy type variegation. Because the first generation of Thai constellation is very different from this. And I must say that I really like how dramatic the variegation is on this, although I would not know how to differentiate this from the creme brulee. Next, we have another Thai constellation, the Legacy. Again, I don't know how to differentiate a lot of these, but I guess if for the more trained eye, you would be able to know the difference. But the Monstera Legacy, I believe, was named by Tason's Craft Garden, which we will have an episode soon. Very dramatic variegation again, and this is actually quite beautiful. And remember when he released this, he released it in pretty great numbers, so a lot of people have been able to acquire this plant. And next is the Monstera Masterpiece. I think this might be a Deliciosa variety, and pictured here is Mike DeAndrea from our interview at the Bangkok International Exotic Plants. He said that this looks a little bit like a Renaissance painting. That's why he called it the masterpiece. It does have a lot of gradient of variegation. It's very complex. It does look like oil painting, and this is like a younger plant. It is quite beautiful, and I see that in one of the leaves the variegation is on the outside. So this is one that is very intriguing for me, and I'm trying to see how it will develop as a more mature plant. But if I look at some of the more established plant photos, it looks like the leaves are a little bit contorted, like they are not flat, they're not like, I don't know how you say it, they're not like the typical Monstera leaves. So if you are planning to get this plant, look into the curls and see if that's something that really vibe with you or not. But this is a relatively new plant. Mike has been responsible for finding a lot of these variegated Monsteras. He's someone that you really should follow if you are trying to keep track of your variegated Monsteras. Now sticking to Mike's plants, the next one is the Shamrock Shake. He mentioned in the Bangkok International Exotic Plant Show that it looks like a shamrock. Now I did look up shamrock, and it's this like Irish looking plant thing. Now this is also relatively new, so I'm looking out to see more larger varieties to see how they would size up. Okay, the next one is one of my favorite Monsteras, the tricolor Thai constellation. So Mike might have been one of the first one to discover it, I don't know, but I love tricolor anything. Like a lot of philodendrons that are variegated are coming with tricolors now. But this one is beautiful, so it's got white and yellow variegation. Of course, the variegation quality is different from plant to plant. I've seen some like very sad looking tricolors, and I've seen some really wonderful specimens of it. And this other plant has really wonderful variegation. You see almost like white creams and this yellow neon variegation. So I might even say that it has like at least 4 tones of variegation on it. That is truly a beautiful plant, my gosh. I'm really mesmerized by the splotches, the randomness of the variegation and the complexity of the color. And here's some more Monsteras that were emailed by Mike. He didn't say much about it, so I'm just going to read the name. The Monstera Fishbone, and this is the Monstera Green on Green. By the way, I will have an episode with Mike. I'll be filming at his nursery next week, so I'm excited about that. This is the Limelight Brazil and Marble Yakuza Elbow. So this is a quote from Mike himself. The Monstera Silver Sands was purchased in October 2022 at the first annual International Exotic Plant Show in Chiang Mai. This plant is growing into something really different and really nice, getting ready for full-on growing season pretty soon here in South Florida, and looking forward to seeing this one grow along with its props. This is the Thai constellation Medusa. It is not a new plant by any means. I think I saw it last year, so I think people have been growing them out for maybe at least 2 or 3 years. It is a Monstera Thai constellation that is very, very curly. The leaves wave around dramatically. I don't know if you're into that. It does have that sculptural quality to it. And I guess I can see it looking nice in some gardens or in some living spaces, but it really isn't one that I like particularly. So these are words from Didi himself. The Monstera Deliciosa fortune Tao Tong Kip Ma. The Thai phrase Tao Tong Kip Ma can be translated into English as the golden ashes rides a horse. I don't really know what that means, but this one is a seedling Monstera spore that's really hard to get, and it's very slow growing with silver and neon green splash variegation, contorted in some leaves, a bit compact, and dark green leaf on the base. He said before the pandemic, he saw it in a Japanese auction for 2 million Japanese yen, and now he found it in a Bangkok show for 400,000 Thai baht, and this time he has the money to afford this, so he's very happy about that. The next plant is the Monstera Deliciosa Fantasy. This kind of mutation Monstera contorted Taikon with dark leaf and curly, strange, and unique shaped leaves. I found this in Bangkok with the price of 450,000 Thai baht. And then there's the Monstera Deliciosa Brazil Mint mutation. I don't know how that's different from the Brazil Mint that we have featured, but this Monstera sport seedling is one of a kind than mint with thick white creamy mint color and special character like mix of Deliciosa and Deliciosa var Brazilian common form. So this is taken from the episode filmed at Holmes' home. Feel free to check that episode out. He has a lot of large Monsteras. And this one here is a full mint. He was trying to compare the full mint Monstera with the Brazilian mint. So the Brazilian mint would have like these white, solid white variegation when it came out with a new leaf, but over time it will fade into this like lighter, like minty type variegation. That's why they call it a Brazilian mint. And as a Brazil variety, it does have that more fishbone shape. So the fenestrations run deep almost to the center of the plant. And this is actually very beautiful. And as a Deliciosa, it does size up really well. And then next up, we have the Monstera Mint. I guess this made rounds like 4 or 5 years ago. And it was actually very, very expensive when it was launched. But then these days, I think it is a little bit more affordable, although it is still out of my budget. And this is one that is grown beautifully by Pomelo Garden. This was filmed from our Thai Bangkok International Exotic Plant Show, and I did a shorts on this. Look at how beautiful this particular specimen was grown. Every single leaf is in pristine conditions, maybe because it is a Deliciosa variety, so it doesn't crisp up as easily as the Borsigianas, but this was well taken care of. Like, it looks almost symmetrical. Every leaf is in perfect shape. There's no crisping. There's like just no problem with this plant or whatsoever. Now, a lot of people did comment to ask how this was grown so perfectly. My guess is, of course, it has received good care, but it was probably grown in an evap room. So in Thailand, they have this evap system with like high humidity, high airflow, and it's got temperature control, so it's cool. So a lot of plants, a lot of rare areas in Thailand are grown that way. That's why they look so good. The next plant is the full mint. Now this is one that's very similar to the mint, but it is just completely mint throughout the leaf. I'm guessing this was created when you have a regular mint, follow the variegation on the stripe, and find one stripe that passes right through the growing eye. So in that growing eye, it will grow a completely mint leaves. Now this one has some chlorophyll, so it will probably grow quite well. The next one is the ocean mint. I don't know where this came from, but I did see this around 4, 5, 6 years ago during COVID. So this is probably not a new plant, but it is quite beautiful. Moving on next, this is just called the Monstera New Mutation. And again, this is from the Bangkok International Exotic Plant Show. On the left, you've got the larger plant. On the right, you've got this tiny, tiny baby plant. So we don't know the name for this just yet. And this one here might be the Monstera Orange. I featured that in Holmes' previous home episode, I think it was like 3 years ago, he might have discovered it or named it, or he might have brought it in, but I'm not sure. It is very different from the yellow Marilyn. The yellow Marilyn would have a neon yellow variegation, but this one has like a nice neon orange type variegation. And the leaves actually look very thick and sturdy on this one. And the next one is the Monstera Siam, and this is from an Indonesian booth actually, Ruang Taman Tangka. Sorry, the name is going to be on the screen, but this is the first time I'm seeing this plant and have a feeling that this plant actually originates from Thailand. And this is the larger variety, but pictured below there's a smaller, cuter. All right, and the next one, this is the Monstera Deliciosa var Brazil, and it is skeleton. It's got like really interesting, almost green on green variegation. But again, as a Deliciosa that's var Brazil, it does have that fishbone shape to the leaves, which is very dramatic. And I quite like this actually. It does look like a plant that's very sturdy and size up quite well. And I highly recommend for you to check out that home episode because we did cover a lot of beautiful Monsteras in there. All right, the next one. This one I find incredibly adorable. The Monstera White Lava. I don't know where it came from, but it's got that bit of variegation in the center and it looks very complex. It looks like a tricolor almost because you see that bit of white with a bit of yellow as well. And I mentioned this before and I'm going to say it again and again. It does look a lot like the Philodendron Hederaceum Brazil. And this specimen here is actually from a China booth, I believe M Garden, I could be wrong, but their leaves actually can look quite different one from another. So the next plant is the White Monster by Mr. Kunzo. So he discovered and named this plant. It is almost dominantly all white variegation, but it does have a little bit of chlorophyll. And the next is Yellow Marilyn. This is also discovered and named by Mr. Kunzo, and it's named after Marilyn Monroe, I guess because of her blonde hair. Perhaps. So this one is one that is actually very yellow. It is a little different from the orange Monstera that we saw earlier. Now in my last Bangkok International Exotic Plants Show episode, I discovered two Monsteras that looked very similar. The Vietciosa from Vietnam and the Bulbasaur from China. Now the Vietciosa has changed its name to Vietciosa for easier pronunciation. Now there's a little bit of controversy around it, but let's not jump to conclusions and let's not take any sides because there's little evidence to support foul play. It is highly possible that both parties came up with the plant at the same time, but they're just different plants. Here's a photo of them side by side submitted by Mike DeAndrea with the lighter leaf coming from the Bulbasaur. Alright, let's start with the Monstera Vietciosa. I came across this plant at the Bangkok International Exotic Plant Show in June, and it was actually discovered by Zan Zan, an urban forest, by Pam and Huang, and I believe there are other founders as well. So air quote, this is their own words, the plant originated as an ethyl methampsulfonate, EMS for short, induced whole plant mutation of an unnamed Monstera Deliciosa plant. In the spring of 2019, meristematic tissue culture propagation of this Monstera Deliciosa plant began in a plant tissue culture laboratory in Hanoi, Vietnam. After 5 months in culture, the plant tissue was transferred to an agar medium to induce multiplication. 1 month later, the plant tissue was treated with EMS to induce mutation. Now, I was actually explained by them that EMS is a kind of chemical manipulation of the plants, and they're added to a certain concentration to a population of plants, and the amount of chemical that's ideal to add to this population is that they would kill about 50% of the population. This means that 50% of the plants will actually survive and would potentially mutate. So that is how they figured out the sweet spot for the concentration. Now, one plant was observed in February 2020 to have unique foliage variegation. This plant was isolated and further evaluated to confirm its characteristics. And in January 2022, it was determined that the unique foliage variegation and coloration of the claimed plant would be favorable for commercial marketability. That's a mouthful. At temperatures below or near 30 degrees Celsius, the foliage is dark green, irregularly flecked, and blotched with white and green-white, while at temperatures above or near 35 degrees Celsius, the foliage is lighter shade of green and irregularly flecked. Now, in 2024, they were shown in Vietnam for the first time, and the second time this plant was shown was in Bangkok International Exotic Plants, which we featured in that long episode in June. Feel free to check that episode out. Now, as of July, to their best knowledge, around 100 plants are in existence, and the baby plant costs around $2,000 to $4,000 per leaf. Alright, moving on to the Monstera Bulbasaur. This was founded by M Garden by a lady boss named Yo-Yo. So they actually reached out to me because in the Bangkok International Exotic Plant Show, I featured the plant in a booth. I filmed it there, but I tagged the name of the booth. So they corrected me that the name on the booth is just their temporary distribution partner in Thailand. Now here's the quote from them. At M Garden, we have a habit of purchasing odd and unusual Monstera seedling from farms. In 2021, we acquired a mutated Monstera seedling from a large farm specializing in regular green Monsteras at a relatively low price. When the Bulbasaur was young, it looked quite unattractive with variegation that resembled patches on a toad. Because of its unappealing appearance, farms typically discard or destroy plants like this. It was only after we nurtured it to maturity that people realized it could be so beautiful, a bit like the story of Ugly Duckling turning into a black swan. And since 2021, we have been cultivating it in our garden. As the plant matured, its leaves grew larger and the variegation gradually expanded, appearing in a lovely light green hue, sometimes in small spots and sometimes in larger patches. In early 2023, we began promoting it on Chinese social media and showcased it on our e-commerce live streams. Many customers inquired about this new variety and asked how much it would cost. But we didn't sell it at the time. Instead, we decided to propagate it, feeling that there was a significant interest in the plant. Around March of 2023, Chinese plant enthusiasts, inspired by its variegation pattern, started calling it the Monstera Bulbasaur. The name, referencing to the Pokemon character Bulbasaur, was both straightforward and fitting for the plant's characteristics, and it quickly gained acceptance among Chinese enthusiasts. Due to its undeniable beauty, the plant's popularity surged, with the price rising from 2,000 RMB per leaf to 15,000 RMB. As of July 2024, most of the owners of Monstera Bulbasaur in China are focused on propagation and are not selling the plant. Additional information: characteristics of the Monstera Bulbasaur. It does not lose its variegation, the cuttings have almost 100% chance of producing variegated offspring, it grows relatively slowly, and is originated from a mutated seedling. And they actually did share another variegated Monstera that they have discovered. They named it the Yellow Pompon. So the Monstera Yellow Pompon is a relatively rare variety of Monstera plant with leaves that undergo a fascinating transformation process. Its new leaves emerge in a yellow lemon color, then gradually turn into a bright yellow. If provided with ample light, the yellow hues become even more vivid and bright. What's particularly special is that its older leaves eventually turn into creamy white. Its leaf shape is round and plump with a relatively thick texture, making it less prone to leaf scorching compared to the common Monstera Deliciosa aurea. Okay, let's talk about the Monstera Devil. I've inquired so many people on the origin story of the Monstera Devil and no one's been able to tell me where it came from. And this plant was actually made famous for its hefty price tag of around $30,000 when it debuted at Bangkok International Exotic Plants, I believe March of this year. But it also has very unique physical appearance. It is almost fully variegated, but not like the white monster or the full mint. First of all, the fenestrations do run deep, almost to the center of the leaves, mimicking a human rib cage, but there's also the right amount of green chlorophyll defiantly clinging onto this nearly all variegated plant that makes it look like cracks in bone. The original name of this plant was not the Monstera Devil, but rather it was 薄荷芯片未被族. That means circuit board Monstera, as it resembles an integrated circuit. It was discovered by a little-known collector in China by the name Apen from Leshan City. His Instagram account is 环植物旅游, which means travel around plants. In 2019, Apen selected a seedling and had a hunch that it was different. It later grew up to display this unusual variegation, and here the picture was taken in June of 2020, and the next one was taken in October. At the time, the variegation was still quite sectoral, meaning it was showing patches of green. Apen performed selective propagation, and that means propagating it until the right variegation came along. And this is achieved when the stripe of the variegation hits the growing eye at the exact same spot. So he did not know that he was going to produce the Monstera Devil as we know it today. It took him 2 years of cultivation before achieving a stable plant that we see. And in June of 2023, M Garden, which we mentioned earlier on, purchased a few leaves from Apen, and this time it was going viral in China's social media called Xiaohongshu. Now, Apen sold 2 plants to China and 1 large specimen to Thailand. And in Thailand in 2024, it received a new name, a rebranding called the Monstera Devil. Now, after letting go of the plant completely, Uppan actually lost the plant, so he doesn't have it anymore. But then a plant friend actually gave one back to him. And this plant community is just so full of giving and sharing. And this is one of the things that drew me to this hobby. Such a heartwarming story. Now, Uppan also shared another discovery called Monstera Cream Dream. Based on the photo, it does look like a mutation from the Thai constellation. China is a huge ornamental plant market with its own social media, and it's so disconnected from the rest of the world. But I've actually met many passionate hybridizers and growers in China, but their work remains a mystery. With a huge population of determined growers in China, we can expect a lot of interesting mutations and cultivars, hopefully in the upcoming years. Now, as I was editing this video, a new plant friend Joshua reached out to me about International Aroid Show, which I'm participating next week. So I requested Josh to give us a quick tour of his Monsteras. Now, I've only seen these plants in shows, so I'm excited to see these in the real world in plant collectors' homes. So over to you, Josh.
Hi there, my name is Joshua. I'm a Monstera collector based out of Seattle, Washington. I'm so thankful that I get to be here to show you guys all the different varieties that I'm collecting and growing right here in my bedroom. Thank you, Sean, for having me. I've always really loved Monstera because there's so many different kinds of varieties and so many different patterns that you can possibly find. And it's always exciting because you never know what you're getting with every new leaf, every new growth, and all the people that I've met along the way with my Monstera journey have been some of the most amazing people that I've ever met. So the whole journey from collecting to meeting new people and cultivating relationships, I think all of it is really exciting and fun. So without further ado, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the Monsteras that I have right here sitting on my shelf. And yeah, let's get started. This one is my No ID Mints. I just gave a 2-leaf bottom cut to a friend in downtown Seattle. This one is really cool because the variegation, I believe, can be influenced as well with more fertilizer and more light, giving it this more elbow kind of coloration. I love the form. This intermediate form is really attractive with its tight fenestration, very close to the midrib. You can see here all the different textures and layers of color are really beautiful. And this is one that will always stay in my collection. While I was on a trip to Big Island with my family earlier this summer, I was able to visit Tom Pirgosi, who's the original cultivator of the Hawaiian form Sirana. I have this big top cut from him that is finally starting to root in very well, and I have some propagations that I took from his mother plant as well, and some single node mid cuts that are finally starting to sprout. I really love how skeletal and fun this form gets when it's mature. This one's a really fascinating Monstera. This is Monstera White Lava, brand new mutation. The white seeps through the center midrib. It's very beautiful, and it can also be influenced by light and fertilizer as well. If you don't give it enough nitrogen or you give it too much light, you'll end up with something like this where the center variegation band is a little too thick. So hopefully on this newest leaf that's coming out, since I've been giving it more fertilizer, more nitrogen, and a little less light, hopefully it'll produce more of that signature center veining. This one is Monstera Vietciosa. This is another one of those Deliciosa variants that has this green flecking on top of the white variegation. This is one that I'm really excited to continue growing out. This is a Monstera compacta aurea. Not only is it a dwarf form, but it's variegated as well. There's very, very few people that have this plant too. I think the only other collector that I know so far is based in Belgium. I have some propagations here of this hyperfenestrated Monstera from Thailand. There's lots and lots of fenestrated holes. I have lots of cuts that should be available soon, so we'll be excited to see what these do. Here's my Deliciosa large form elbow. This one I've been keeping and propagating because the balance between the white and the green is pretty nice. You can see the other leaves here. Super pretty. This leaf in particular, wow. You can see nice separation amongst the different levels of variegation.
Alright, I'm gonna end this story here. Let me know in the comment section which Monstera is your favorite. Thank you again Palm Street for sponsoring this episode. If you live in the United States, Palm Street is one way to discover amazing rare plants from a diverse community of growers through interactive live shopping. My name is Sean and I'm at Botanist on Instagram if you want to see my daily shenanigans and updates. Thank you Patreon and YouTube members for supporting this channel. You're throwing me a financial lifeline and allowing me to create all this wonderful content for everyone. For the rest of you, just by you watching this video all the way to the very end, commenting and liking and staying subscribed is really helping out the channel quite a lot. And I will see you guys in the next one.